Thank you for joining us for Broadway Peace Talks, where we take a deep dive into the histories, inspiration, and people who bring Broadway shows to life on stage with Dr. Broadway, Kristin Presley. We hope you'll enjoy this talk on Mean Girls and then join us at the Peace Center for the show.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I believe we have hit 6:30. That's the magic hour when we begin our virtual Peace Talks this season. Thank you so much for joining us. Believe it or not, we are wrapping up another season. We just have a few more shows before this season is over, and we kick off another really outstanding season at the Peace Center. If you haven't yet seen what next season will look like, I hope that you'll visit the Peace Center's website so that you can see all of the incredible shows that are still coming up next season. But this season, we still have several great shows to go. Mean Girls, obviously, we've got Hamilton, we've got Ain't Too Proud. We've got quite a season ahead of us. So we appreciate you joining us tonight to talk specifically about Mean Girls, which will be in Greenville in just about a week here. So tonight, we're going to start off our talk talking about the woman who is responsible for the backstory of Mean Girls. And I know you're probably all thinking, oh, good, here's the part where we talk about Tina Fey. But believe it or not, that's not where we're going to start. We're actually going to start with another woman, a woman named Rosalind Wiseman. She's the one who wrote the book that inspired Tina Fey to write the movie, which of course then inspired Tina Fey to write the musical. So tonight we're going to talk about Rosalind Wiseman. We'll talk about Tina Fey, of course. And then we'll talk about the Mean Girls movie real briefly. We'll talk about the musical. Then we have a wonderful conversation with Lawrence Street, who plays Mr. Duval in the musical. Now, Mr. Duval is a part in the movie, if you're familiar with the movie, played by Tim Meadows. And interestingly and notably, this comes up in our conversation, that's the only character that reappears in Mean Girls 2. Now, Mean Girls 2 was not written by Tina Fey, but that character of Mr. Duval is an important enough one that he shows up in Mean Girls too. So you'll want to stick around to hear from him. And then as the cherry on top, because it's a Tina Fey show, of course, there has to be some real comedy involved. So we're going to see just a little clip of Tina Fey kind of lampooning herself in a sketch from SNL. So I hope you'll stick with us all the way through the end. So without further ado, let's get started talking about Mean Girls. Let me share my screen. Play from start. Here we go. All right, here we are. So like I said, believe it or not, this story doesn't start with Tina Fey. It actually starts with Rosalind Wiseman. Let me tell you a little bit about her and about the book that she wrote that put this germ of an idea into Tina Fey's head. So Rosalind Wiseman was born and raised in Washington, D.C., and then she moved to Los Angeles for college. She actually went to Occidental College, and while she was there, she started studying martial arts. Now, this is really important, as you'll come to find out. But she studied martial arts. She married a fellow student. She ended up with a degree in political science. And she also earned a secondary degree. She got a black belt in karate. And when she moved back to Washington, she started teaching martial arts to young women, kind of as a self-defense sort of thing. And this is really where the story of Mean Girls, as it became, the germ of the idea begins. So while she was teaching these young women to defend themselves, she was teaching them karate, martial arts. She heard a lot about the sorts of issues that they were facing in school, just in their peer groups, a lot of the things that were going on that sort of shocked her to hear. It didn't sound necessarily similar to what she had experienced growing up. And she often, her parents would come up to her during or at the end of their daughter's classes and tell her what was happening in these girls' lives. And she was really astounded. So after several years of dealing with these sorts of issues in dealing with these girls in her martial arts classes, she decided to write a book about it and to really dig into what was going on with these girls and what they were facing. So in 2002, she published Queen Bees and Wannabes, Helping Your Daughter Survive Cliques, gossip, boyfriends, and other realities of adolescence. And like I said, it all started from those martial arts classes that she was teaching in Washington, D.C. Now, this, like I said, published in 2002 and became a New York Times bestseller. It was very clear from an early on that it resonated with a lot of people. It was not just these girls in Washington, D.C. that were facing these issues. It was a nationwide, really worldwide kind of thing, and it became a New York Times bestseller. So she was approached, as you can imagine, by many people wanting to adapt the book into a film or a TV show. It was very interesting subject matter, something that producers saw needed to be explored. And so they approached her, and every time she turned them down. And every time she turned them down, she said, no, because I know it will be cheesy. So she didn't want it to be handled lightly. She wanted it to be handled in the right way, in a way that was poignant and meaningful. And so finally, when she was approached by Tina Fey, she knew enough about Tina Fey to know, okay, I think she'll do it justice. At this point, as we'll talk about in just a minute, Fey had already made her mark by way of SNL. So she was a well-known commodity in the comedy world. And Rosalind Wiseman felt very confident that Tina Fey would handle the material well. So she signed on with Tina Fey and said, okay, I'll give you the rights to take this story and run with it. And that's the beginning of Mean Girls. But before we go any farther, now that was 2002, the movie came out about 18 months later in 2004. But before I get any farther into that rabbit trail, I want to talk specifically about Tina Fey. She's probably no stranger to most of us. We're familiar with her work because there's been so much of it. But let me tell you a little bit about her background. And then, like I said, we'll get specifically into Mean Girls. So Tina Fey grew up in Pennsylvania. She attended Upper Darby High School and then went to the University of Virginia. She studied drama there, graduated in 1992, had a lot of success in the theater department there, but always knew that in her heart, she wanted to be a comedian. She wanted to be on Saturday Night Live. So she moved to Chicago after she graduated from the University of Virginia and started taking classes at Second City. Now, if you're familiar with Second City, you know, well, Chicago in and of itself is well known for breeding comic actors. And Second City in particular is well known for breeding comic actors and then sending them on to SNL. So you've got people like Chris Farley, all kinds of the SNL crowd that started at Second City. Comedians of all ilk start at Second City. And so that's why she went to Chicago. She thought, I'm going to take classes there. She worked during the day as a receptionist at a YMCA in Evanston, which is home of Northwestern University. And she took classes at night. And it was there, while performing at another improv comedy company called Improv Olympic, that she met her future husband, Jeff Richmond. Now, Jeff Richmond, he's going to come up again later. You may already know this about him, but he is a pianist. And that's going to come up again here when we're talking about Mean Girls, the musical. But nevertheless, he played the piano. If you know anything about improv, you know that often the improvisations will require you to sing a song or come up with a musical number, something like that. And so Jeff Richmond was a pianist at Improv Olympic who would play kind of to assist the comedians as they came up with their sketches and ideas. So that's where they met and they got married. And like I said, Tina always dreamt of being on SNL. So she pursued that dream. She would send in scripts unsolicited to SNL just to see if maybe she might get lucky and get somebody's attention. And finally, in 1997, she did get some attention from the head writer, Adam McKay. That was 1997. And she was invited to New York just to kind of see if they might be able to work together. And as it turned out, she was. She became a writer on SNL in 1997. And then when Adam McKay left his role as head writer in 1997, Lorne Michaels, famous producer of SNL since the beginning, approached Tina Fey about becoming the first female head writer on the show. So that was 1999. Now, let me review that a little bit for you. She graduated from UVA in 1992. She goes to Chicago, makes it to New York in pretty short order, 1997, only 5 years removed from college. And then within 2 years, she had proven herself a valuable enough part of the writing team there at SNL that she was promoted to head writer, which is, as you can imagine, a pretty illustrious position. And notwithstanding the fact that she was the first female to hold that role. Eventually, she became a performer on the show as well as a writer of the show. She anchored Weekend Update, and famously, I know we all remember her portrayal of Sarah Palin, and I guess that would have been 2008. Right? 2008, hard to believe it was that long ago. But nevertheless, she, while still working as head writer on SNL, also she wrote other shows, 30 Rock. I'm sure we're all familiar with that one, as well as The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, which was on Netflix. She took on movie writing, and Mean Girls was the first of those movies. We'll talk more about those in just a minute. And subsequently, she wrote movies like Baby Mama, Date Night, which co-starred Steve Carell and several others. And she wrote a book, Bossy Pants, which was on the New York Times bestseller list for 5 weeks. So she followed in the footsteps of Rosalind Wiseman and wrote a New York Times bestseller. Now, just to tell you, as we, like I said, we'll get specific to Mean Girls here in just a minute. But prior to that, let me tell you the awards that she has won for her comedic writing: 9 Primetime Emmy Awards, 3 Golden Globe Awards, 5 Screen Actors Guild Awards, 7 Writers Guild of America Awards. She was the AP Entertainer of the Year in 2008. Of course, that was the year of that Sarah Palin impersonation. And she also won the 2010 Mark Twain Prize for American humor. She was the youngest person ever to win that prize. As you know, that is, when it comes to American comedy, that is the top of the mountain. So she had achieved a lot in a very short amount of time. A lot of it, though, started with Mean Girls, this film that premiered in 2004. Now, for those of you who may not have seen it, or maybe it's been a while since you saw it, I'm going to show you the preview that hopefully will spark your memory a little bit. And if you have seen it, then it will at least remind you of what you might happen to see when the musical comes to town next week. So here is the preview of Mean Girls, which premiered in 2004.
We have a new student with us. She just moved here from Africa.
Welcome. I'm from Michigan. Great. I'm 16, but until today, I was homeschooled. And then it was goodbye, Africa. Hello, high school. Hi, I'm Katie. I'm Jess. This is Damien.
Watch out, new meat coming through.
This map shows the school's central nervous system, the cafeteria. You got your cool Asians, burnouts, jocks, the greatest people you will ever meet, and the worst. So you've never been to a real school before? Shut up. Shut up. I didn't say anything. It's plastics. Where are the plastics?
13 royalty.
That's Karen Smith. She is one of the dumbest girls you will ever meet. What kind of psychic? Really? It's like I have ESPN or something. Gretchen Wieners. She has 2 Fendi purses and a silver license. Evil takes a human form in Regina George. She knows everything about everyone.
That's why her hair is so big. It's full of secrets.
We want to invite you to have lunch with us. Regina seems sweet.
Get in, loser. We're going shopping.
Your house is really nice. I know, right? Being with the plastics was like leaving the actual world. Entering girl world.
Have you seen any guys that you think are cute yet?
There's this guy in my calculus class. His name's Aaron Samuels.
No. That's Regina's ex-boyfriend. Ex-boyfriends are off limits. I mean, that's just like the rules of feminism.
Gretchen told me that you like Aaron Samuels. I could talk to him for you if you want. Really? You would do that?
I want.
You're so hot.
Why did she do that?
She's a life ruiner. I knew how this would be settled in the animal world. This was girl world. All the fighting had to be sneaky. I want to lose 3 pounds. For these nutrition bars my mom uses to lose weight. But we're close. It's 5. You could try Sears.
Why are you eating a Caltine bar?
What?
You're getting like crazy.
She is. I like invented her. I'm sorry I laughed at you.
I'm sorry I called you fat.
I'm sorry that people are so jealous of me. But I can't help it that I'm popular. He's looking fine tonight, Seth Musikowski. He's your cousin. What? He's a good kisser.
All right. So now that you know what you know about where that came from, thinking back to Rosalind Wiseman's book, you can really begin to see some of the motivations that led Faye to see, you know what, this I think is something that we need to explore using comedy. But it does make it kind of jump off the page or off the screen a little bit more when you understand where it's coming from. These girls who were going through these real life catastrophes, and Tina Fey was able to tell that story with humor, as only a winner of the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor can, right? So let's talk specifically about the movie Mean Girls. It was originally titled Homeschooled, as you heard there in the trailer for it. The key character in the movie was homeschooled. And so it was originally entitled Homeschooled. Tina Fey wrote this film over one summer at Fire Island. She would talk to the teenagers in her life and really hear about their experiences and marry that with some of the things that she'd read in Wiseman's books. Now, originally, as you saw, Tina Fey played a role in that film. She was Miss Norbury, one of the teachers in the film. And she was originally going to make the movie about herself. It was going to, well, not about herself, but about that character. It was going to be centered on that character. But this is a teacher who makes it her mission to try to reform some of these students who have clearly gone off the rails a little bit. And eventually, the more that she talked with some of the teenage girls that she knew, the more she realized their stories were way more interesting. So she pivoted it from making it a movie about Miss Norbury to making it a movie about the girls. But like I said, she wrote it over the course of a summer. And she went through about 10 different drafts of the script before she finally got it into the shape that she wanted it to be. It was directed, the film, when it came out, it was directed by Mark Waters. It had about a $17 million budget and ended up grossing $130 million worldwide. It made $24 million in its first weekend alone. So it was a big fat hit from the jump. And really, as you probably noticed in the preview, there were a lot of familiar faces there. And this film helped to either launch or at least solidify the careers of people like Lindsay Lohan and Rachel McAdams, and also several, like I mentioned, of Tina Fey's fellow SNL alums like Tim Meadows, who plays the principal, and Amy Poehler. So this was a film that was obvious from the beginning. This was one, if Broadway is looking to poach stories from movies, this was one that was ripe for poaching for a couple of reasons. One is it was a big fat hit. Everybody liked the story. Clearly it resonated with a real wide swath of the population. The stories about these girls were something that many people could relate to. So you had that. But then there was the practical aspect of it, in that, remember, I mentioned that Tina Fey is married to Jeff Richmond, who is a what? A pianist. Not only a pianist, but also a composer. So it made a lot of sense that Tina Fey, when it became known that Mean Girls would eventually become a musical, it made sense that he would sign on to write the music. And of course he did. So when the movie premiered, this was right around the time in Broadway history that we begin to see a lot of, I've said this before in Peace Talks, historically, a great musical became a movie. Think about The Sound of Music or Oklahoma or Annie, right? Those were all musicals first and then movies. Now we're doing it in reverse for a number of reasons, but now we're doing it in reverse. And so the early 2000s, this was not when it first started, but it kind of hit a fever pitch in that moment. And so as soon as the movie came out, it was a foregone conclusion that it would eventually become a musical. The question was just, when will it become a musical? And of course, Tina Fey said she didn't want to do a musical unless she could write it herself. So again, one of the hangups was the timing. I read to you some of her films that she had written, the work that she was doing. She was still working as a head writer on SNL, so she was pretty busy. Finding time to squeeze in writing a musical didn't really fit into all that she had going on, until finally in 2013, it was announced that it would be coming to Broadway, maybe not soon, but it would be coming to Broadway. Things were beginning to happen behind the scenes. They were beginning to talk about ways that they might update the movie so that it would be, inclusive of things like social media and other things that weren't really around in 2004 when the film premiered. And she insisted not only that she write it herself, but also that she have a great team of creators around her. And so in this slide here, you see some images of some of those fellow creators at the bottom. You see her husband, Jeff Richmond. Like I said, he's the songwriter, the composer of the music in the piece, there with his burn book. And then you see director Casey Nicholaw. Now, Casey Nicholaw, you may not know it, but we at the Peace Center are no strangers to his work. Several of his shows have been through in recent memory. He born and raised in San Diego, California, and then moved to New York City and worked as a dancer on Broadway in shows like Crazy for You and Victor Victoria and Thoroughly Modern Millie. And then he took the leap to directing, and he's done real well for himself. I know you'll recognize some of these titles. The Book of Mormon, which has been through several times, Something Rotten, a really hilarious show that was through, as well as The Book of Mormon, The Prom, most recently on Broadway, now on Netflix, and a movie adaptation of that on Netflix. He was the director of those shows. And then my favorite show, sometimes I am asked at Peace Talks, what is my favorite musical? It is The Drowsy Chaperone. And Casey Nicholaw, that was his directorial debut on Broadway. So he's known, as you can imagine, for very hilarious shows, which made him a perfect choice to be at the helm of Mean Girls on Broadway as they began to talk about adapting it. Nell Benjamin is the other collaborator that you see there. Nell Benjamin was the lyricist. She'd written some plays, but she'd also written the lyrics for Legally Blonde, the musical. Now we can see some thematic overlap between those two. So that made her a really easy choice for the lyricist for this piece. They worked for several years and to get it ready for Broadway. Again, as I talk a little bit about this with Lawrence Street in our conversation, we'll see in just a minute. But the piece stays largely the same. Super fans of the film are going to see all of those things that they want to see from the film, but they have updated it to include some new things that weren't around in 2004. And that just took some time, not to mention all of these collaborators, particularly Casey Nicholaw and Tina Fey herself, were very busy doing other things in their very busy careers. So it just took some time to get it all worked out. But finally, the show was ready to go. It premiered on Broadway at the August Wilson Theater in April of 2018 and was nominated for 12 Tony Awards that year. So it was quite a haul of Tony Award nominations. And then it closed, as every show closed, in March of 2020. And the decision was made over the COVID shutdown that it would not reopen after lockdowns were over, and that it would instead find its life on the road. And that's exactly as it has done. So without further ado, I want you to hear from Lawrence E. Street. Like I said, he plays Mr. Duval, and he has some real interesting things to say, not only about this show, but also about touring, and what that's like in a post-COVID or in the middle of COVID, whatever we are right now. But he talks about what the realities of touring during a pandemic and how things looked pre-pandemic and how things look post-pandemic, and how Broadway companies are keeping their cast and crews safe. So I think it's a real interesting interview. And then, like I said, the cherry on top at the end of our conversation is a clip from SNL in which Tina Fey shows us that maybe she should star in her show on Broadway, just like she starred in her movie. So stay tuned. Here is Larry Street. As promised, everybody, it's now the moment in the Peace Talk when we pivot to having a conversation with a company member from the show that we're talking about. This week, of course, we're talking about Mean Girls, and we are very privileged to have with us Lawrence E. Street, who plays the role of Mr. Duval. Now, if you know Mean Girls, you will recognize that character, so we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But first, I'm going to let Larry introduce himself. Larry, tell us about yourself, some favorite roles you've played in the past, anything you want us to know about you.
Sure. I grew up in central New Jersey, in South Plainfield, New Jersey. which is about 45 minutes from New York City. I think it's interesting that I attended public school, K through 12. I walked to school, basically. The town's so small, I walked to school from kindergarten to senior high school. I went to Carnegie Mellon University for my undergrad. I studied music there as a voice major, and went on and got a master's degree in music also. My initial entry into performing arts was via opera, actually.
Oh, wow.
So I've gone through like many career journeys so far since I've been doing this. I would say some career highlights. I'm a member of the original Broadway cast of Urinetown, which won 3 Tony Awards in 2002. I've also done company at Barrington Stage Company with Aaron Tveit, who recently won the Tony for Moulin Rouge. Let's see. I did South Pacific at Carnegie Hall with Reba McEntire and Brian Stokes Mitchell. And I did Carmen Jones, which was the 75-year anniversary, the revival of it, with John Doyle, the British director John Doyle, at Classic Stage Company, starring Anika Noni Rose. So I've got to perform with some brilliant performers so far.
No kidding. And I want to kind of put a pin in this conversation about Carmen Jones. So I think that we're in South Carolina, obviously. I think that probably a fair number of our viewers would be surprised to hear that Carmen Jones has a South Carolina connection, right? This is an opera written by Oscar Hammerstein, as in Rodgers and Hammerstein, only without the Rodgers. And I wonder if you can tell us just a little bit, just a nugget of what Carmen Jones is about, again, just because we're South Carolinians and we'll be very interested to hear it.
Sure. Carmen Jones is Hammerstein's setting of the Bizet opera Carmen. And it's set in a parachute factory in South Carolina. He set it in a parachute factory in South Carolina on all African Americans. And it was his follow-up, I would say, in a way, operatically, to Porgy and Bess, where he wanted to continue using Black opera singers and Black voices. And honestly, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and elevate us. So he took the Carmen story and he set it in World War II at a parachute factory. And the lead woman, Carmen Jones, has the same kind of internal turmoil as the heroine in the Bizet opera, and unfortunately meets the same tragic end.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And I think Porgy and Bess is probably more familiar to most. Of course, that's the great Gershwin opera that was set in Charleston, South Carolina. But you're right, they too came right, or Carmen Jones came right on the heels of that put South Carolina kind of center stage in that world for a moment, which is really exciting for us as Carolinians. But I have another South Carolina connection for you, or at least a question about it. I saw that you were in the national tour of Flashdance. Is that right?
Yes.
Were you with the company? It came through Greenville in 2014. Were you with the company in, I think it was April of 2014? Do you recall being at the Peace Center before?
I believe I would have been, because I believe my end of the tour finished in June. So it was probably right towards the end.
Yeah.
But I believe so, yeah.
So welcome back. I guess this is a welcome back to the Peace Center. We're looking forward to having you.
Thank you.
So I've already said that you played the role of Mr. Duvall. Now, Mr. Duvall, of course, is the principal in Mean Girls. It's the only character that shows up in both Mean Girls, written by Tina Fey, the 2004 film, and then the sequel, 2011, Mean Girls 2. So I wonder if you can tell us about Mr. Duvall, the only one who makes the jump from the first to the sequel. What's so great about this character? Who is he? What makes him tick? Tell us about him.
He is the principal of North Shore High School. So I guess they wanted some continuity there in terms of the faculty at the school. I see him as a little bit of a fish out of water in a really good way in terms of dealing with so many young women. My perception of Mr. Duvall is maybe a guy who only has sons, who grew up with a lot of male role models, and inundated with high stakes, young female drama and young female energy puts him a little bit on his heels every hour of every day.
Absolutely, absolutely. So how did you prepare to play that role?
I, of course, watched the original movie with Tim Meadows.
Yes.
And I had seen Tim Meadows on Saturday Night Live for years.
Yeah.
So that's just exciting. And then, Tina Fey's script, the script for the musical and her comedy is so specific. I also watched hours of 30 Rock because she's our writer. I wanted to be confident that I understood the rhythm of her language and I understood the rhythm of how she set up a joke.
Yeah.
So I really did a deep dive into 30 Rock and really watched the movie. And then after my first callback, I went to see the musical. But I waited to see the musical because I wanted to have my own hook in from other references before I went to see what Rick Younger was doing in New York.
Mm-hmm. So what was the audition process like? How many, you mentioned a first audition and then a callback. How many auditions do you go through typically to get a show like this?
There really is no typical. At this level of kind of like commercial Broadway theater, there's no typical. We all have very, very different journeys to finally hear that we've booked a show.
Yeah.
I will say for Mean Girls, I had what's called a pre-screen, which is just the actor and the casting director in charge of the piece. And then after my pre-screen, my agent was told that if I got another day, that would be the final day of auditions. And on that day, I would audition once in the morning for our director, Casey Nicolau. And then there would be a cut. And if I was brought back that afternoon, then I would be in front of the producing body, Tina Fey, and Lorne Michaels, the creator of Saturday Night Live, because he's also one of our producers.
Yeah.
So if I made it to the end, I would be, that afternoon, I would be brought back for all those people. Surprisingly enough, when I was brought back in the morning, Tina Fey and Lorne Michaels were there. So I had the opportunity to do both of my callbacks for both of them.
Yeah, wow. That is quite an experience. And I imagine for me, that would be a little bit intimidating. So you must have knocked your socks off. But it sounds like a pretty quick process, as some, you said everybody's journey is different, but you hear about people going months and not hearing anything. And then, I'd forgotten I auditioned for that, but I'm getting a call back all of a sudden.
Yes, absolutely. I think if one of the dancers were here, they would have a journey very similar to that, like having danced many, many different times for many, many different groups of the creatives before they finally book their role.
Yeah. Well, so obviously this film opened in 2004, the film on which the musical is based, written by Tina Fey, as we've talked about earlier in our Peace Talk already. But 2004 and 2020, what is it now, 22, they're very different times. And I know that a lot of the script, a lot of Tina Fey's work remained the same, but I wonder if you can tell me, what are some of the things that she had to update in order to make Mean Girls, the musical, as relevant in 2000, the 2000 teens when she was writing and that premiered, as the film was in 2004? What are some of
Sure.
the changes?
Sure. I think really just technology in terms of Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram. And then in terms of, because a lot of Tina Fey's humor is of the moment. So she's gonna, if she has a character that's gonna make a reference metaphorically to something in a comedic way, it's gonna be a metaphor that's happening right now in the news.
Right.
So we had a different president when the film just came out. We had a different relationship to social media when the film just came out. So I would say those finesse moments in the script were the things that had to be updated, but the meat of the story has remained the same.
So the mega fans are going to see what they want to see, right? They're going to see all those things from the film that they love are going to make it into the musical, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely.
Now, how involved has Tina Fey been with this tour? And Lauren Michaels, you mentioned him being part of the audition process. How involved have they been with the development and rehearsal process of the tour?
Tina Fey was at every day of rehearsal when we first mounted the show in 2019. You know, I don't know if your audience knows, but our show was furloughed for 22 months because of COVID. So we began rehearsal July 2019, performed until March 2020, and then we're furloughed for 22 months. And our initial rehearsal was at an amazing rehearsal studio called New 42, and Tina Fey was there every day.
Wow. Wow.
And she went to our first city. We teched the show in upstate New York. And she flew to upstate New York and she sat in that cold theater. And every day she said, please, please, please don't be afraid to ask me a question. Don't be afraid to bring me an observation. That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
I want you guys to feel as important as you are, which is a big deal, because even with a first national tour, because of time and because the creatives are so busy, you don't always get to be directed and guided by the original director. And you certainly don't get guided by the writers.
Yeah, absolutely.
But both Jeff Richman, who's her husband, who wrote the music, and Nell Benjamin, who wrote the lyrics, and Tina Fey were with us the entire rehearsal process.
Well, let me ask you this. So I know that Mary Mitchell Campbell was the music director for the Broadway production. Did she music direct the tour as well?
Yes, absolutely.
She did. So here's another interesting South Carolina connection. Mary Mitchell Campbell, Peace Talk showgoers, is a graduate of Furman University. So she grew up in North Carolina, but attended Furman, which is a college here in Greenville. So she is a proud Paladin. Our audience will be delighted to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But something that you mentioned, the fact that you started in July of 2019 and then were furloughed. I wonder if you can talk for a moment about the different experience between touring pre-pandemic and touring post-pandemic. Like, I know that the Actors Union has put a lot of safeguards in place for the performers. I wonder if you can tell us about what are some of those processes that these shows are going through as they travel around the country?
Sure. I know that Mean Girls, we have gone through different testing cadences depending upon what state in the United States we are in. We had periods of time where we were tested 6 days a week with a variety of rapid antigen tests and PCR tests that were sent away to labs. We travel with a 3-person COVID management, 3 amazing women from New York and LA travel with us to every city. They give us detailed information when we are about to get to each city of the COVID rates of infection and the protocols that each city has in place in terms of mask wearing indoors and mask wearing outdoors and mask wearing at the venue we're about to perform in. So our COVID officers, Mallory and Megan, make sure that every person has the information they need to not only be a good coworker, but to also feel safe as we travel all these amazing cities, you know, and sightsee and stuff like that.
Yeah. How many cities have you been to so far? I know you're now in Dallas. You said next up you're going to New Orleans. I know you've been to Knoxville, and you'll be in Atlanta later this summer, but where else have you been? How many cities you been to?
I honestly don't know the answer to that question.
You've lost count, right?
Yes. We've been to many cities, many. I can do this. This leg of the tour, which began again in October, had about 4 weeks in Tempe, Arizona, from mid-October until the first week of November. Then from basically November to mid-January, we changed cities every week. And then every once in a while, we were in one city for 2 weeks. But essentially, since the top of November, we've been in a new city every week.
Wow. That's a lot of road time. Do you fly? Do you drive? Or does that vary depending on the cast member?
We have the option to fly. We have the option to basically travel however makes us comfortable. Our company management team offers us 2 flight options, and we have the freedom to take the option that our company management gives us, or take the per diem money and fly on our own or travel on our own. Mm-hmm. We happen to have a lot of wonderful dogs on tour with us.
Yes.
Of all different sizes, like really big dogs and really small dogs. So a lot of our company members are driving across the country with their doggos.
Yeah.
They can take that that nest egg of our per diem and, you know, use it to gas money and travel the way they need to.
Well, so I know our time is drawing to a close, but I just want to hear, what's your favorite moment of Mean Girls? Like, maybe it's a scene that you're in, maybe it's a scene that you never miss, you stand backstage and watch. What's your favorite part of the show?
Finale, Act 1. It's a number called Fearless. And it's when the girls, with the help of Katie, finally get up enough guts to put Regina in her place. And they do it at lunchtime in the cafeteria, and all the students in North Shore High have a kind of like Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead, Wizard of Oz moment where they get to like dance and sing about vanquishing their rival, their Queen Bee. And the number's fabulous, the choreography is fabulous, and the singing is high and beautiful and exciting. And it never fails, actually, to get a roar from the audience. So yeah, Finale Act 1, look for it.
And are you in that number?
I am not.
You're not, so you get to watch it.
I do.
It, right?
I do.
Well, Larry, thank you so much for visiting with us about Mean Girls. We look forward to having you back. I won't say back in the sunny South, because you've been in the sunny South for several weeks now, but we'll look forward to having you back in Greenville in just a few short weeks. Thank you, sir, and have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks, everybody.
All right, so I hope that you noticed he said the phrase Queen Bee. That's one of his favorite moments in the show. Remember the title of Wiseman's book, right? Queen Bees and Wannabes. So don't forget that tie in there. Now, as promised, the cherry on top of a conversation about one of the world's great comedic writers is watching that comedic writer kind of lampoon herself. So here, without further ado, is our grand finale, which is an SNL sketch in which Tina Fey must decide, should I star in Mean Girls on Broadway? So let's see what she decides. Enjoy. All right, so that is our Peace Talk about Mean Girls, the musical, which will be in town starting next Tuesday, May 24th. I hope you'll make plans to join us. A little housekeeping for Peace Talks is that our next one is coming up on, I believe, the 31st of May, and that is with regards to Hamilton. So I hope you'll mark your calendars and plan to join us then. If there's any questions, let me take a look and see. Don't see any there. I think I see George. I see your hand is raised. So George, if your hand is raised, what can I help you with? I see hands raising. I'm not exactly sure what to do with raised hands. So if you have a question, maybe could you drop it into the Q&A box or the chat box, either one. I'll be happy to hang around here and answer anything. Oh, I see one. Let's see here. Oh, thank you. Someone says the video was jerky, but we enjoyed the program. And I'm so sorry to hear that you didn't have a clear view of the video. I'm very sorry to hear that. But I don't see any other things in the chat or the Q&A. So I think that will draw us to our conclusion tonight for this Peace Talk. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, mark your calendars for Hamilton coming up in just a few weeks, and we will see you soon. Have a great week, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to this Broadway Peace Talk on Mean Girls. For more information on the show, go to our website at www.peacecenter.org.